All right, so we're diving into this diplomatic situation between
Mm,
Canada and
there's
India.
a lot going on.
It's escalating pretty quickly.
It is, yeah.
We've got these articles here from the Associated Press, India Today, and NDTV,
Okay,
and they all mention this assassination of a guy named Hardeep Singh Nijjar
right.
that happened in Canada back in June.
Yeah, and that's really the flashpoint here. I mean, Nijjar wasn't just some random Canadian citizen.
Right.
He was a Sikh activist
Hmm.
who was really advocating for Khalistan,
Okay.
an independent Sikh state, which
Oh.
historically that concept has been a really contentious issue between India and some Sikh communities.
So you've got this kind of underlying tension already.
Right.
But then Trudeau comes out and makes this like really strong statement
Yeah.
directly accusing agents of the Indian government
Yeah.
of being involved in Nijjar's assassination.
Which is incredibly rare.
Right.
You almost never see a country make such a direct accusation against another country,
And
especially one that
Yeah.
has these historically close ties with.
yeah,
I mean, they didn't mince words at all.
no.
Trudeau went on to suggest that this whole thing might even be part of a broader pattern
Mm.
of intimidation against Canadians of South Asian descent.
Wow.
And to really drive the point home,
Yeah.
Canada expelled India's High Commissioner
Right.
and 5 other diplomats.
So they're basically like,
Which is a big deal.
yeah, this is serious business.
Yeah, they're not messing around.
So how did India respond to all this?
Well, predictably, they came out swinging.
Okay.
They called Canada's accusations absurd and ludicrous, flatly denied any involvement in Nijjar's death.
But if they've got nothing to hide, why not just, offer up another explanation?
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
At least publicly, they haven't offered any alternative explanation
Mm.
for what Canada is claiming is really strong evidence.
So it's a war of words.
It is.
With some pretty high stakes.
Absolutely.
And then to make things even more interesting, India basically did the same thing right back.
Oh, yeah, tit for tat.
Yeah.
They expelled 6 Canadian diplomats and recalled their High Commissioner from Canada.
So they're like, we're not going to be bullied.
Exactly. They're sending a message.
Yeah, this is serious for us too.
Yeah. And they even made a statement saying they reserve the right to take further steps.
Which doesn't sound like, let's sit down and have a conversation.
No, not really.
So what does all this actually mean?
Right.
It's not like diplomats just playing musical chairs and then everything's fine.
No.
What are the real-world implications of all this?
You've hit on a really crucial point.
Okay.
This goes way beyond just the governments and the diplomats.
Right.
This could impact trade between the two countries, cultural exchanges, even the safety of citizens in both places.
Yeah, keep that.
like-
Remember, you've got...
Large Indian and Sikh communities in both countries.
Yeah, so this is serious stuff.
So we're talking potential economic fallout, increased tensions between communities.
Absolutely.
This is a big deal. It is, and it gets even more complicated when you look at the history between these two countries.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a lot more to unpack there.
Okay, so tell me more about that. You mentioned unpacking the history between Canada and India. What can you tell us about that? Has their relationship always been this tense?
Not always, but there's been this underlying tension between them for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And it really all goes back to this Khalistan movement.
Okay.
It's a really complex issue with roots going back to like the mid-20th century.
Okay.
But essentially, it revolves around this desire of some Sikhs for an independent homeland
Okay.
in the Punjab region, which is actually like right on the border of India and Pakistan.
Oh, wow. So right there in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's a sensitive area. And
Yeah.
for India,
Okay.
they see this movement as a direct threat to their national unity.
So they've cracked down on it pretty hard.
Oh, yeah. They have a history of really coming down hard on any kind of separatist movements within their borders,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where Canada comes back into the picture. Because Canada has this large and very politically active Sikh diaspora,
Right.
and some of them support the Khalistan movement.
So from India's perspective, Canada is almost like a safe haven
Yeah, in a way.
for people they view as extremists.
That's been a point of contention between the two countries for years.
I bet.
Canada maintains that they're just supporting the rights of their citizens.
Right. Free speech and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Peaceful protest advocacy,
Yeah.
But India has always kind of accused Canada of not doing enough to control what they see as extremism.
So this current situation with Nijjar
Right.
didn't just come out of nowhere.
No, it's all happening against this backdrop of decades of tension over the Khalistan issue.
And to understand how serious Canada is taking this whole thing,
Right.
we have to remember Trudeau's initial statement.
Absolutely.
He said there was clear and compelling evidence
Yeah, clear and compelling evidence.
linking Indian agents not just to this assassination,
Yeah.
but to a broader pattern of violence and intimidation.
Which is a really unsettling detail.
It is. So what does that evidence actually suggest? What are they basing these accusations on?
Well, the RCMP has been pretty tight-lipped about giving out any specifics.
Okay.
But the articles that we've got here seem to suggest that the RCMP believes that Najjar's murder was a carefully planned operation.
Mm,
This was not some random act of violence.
right.
They're also saying that they think these agents might be connected to other serious crimes in Canada.
So this is like next level stuff.
Yeah, this is not something you just throw around lightly.
Yeah.
It's a very bold accusation to make.
So we're talking about potential state-sponsored violence
Potentially, yeah.
on Canadian soil?
I mean, no wonder Canada decided to take such drastic measures.
Exactly, accusing another country's diplomats, and especially at such a high level, it's
Oh.
almost unheard of.
Yeah.
It really shows you just how seriously Canada is taking these allegations.
So if India is saying they had nothing to do with any of this, what's their response to these specific accusations? Well, they've just doubled down on their denials.
Okay.
They're calling Canada's claims baseless and politically motivated.
Politically motivated. What do they mean by that?
They're suggesting that Canada is just trying to appease certain segments of their own population.
Like they're trying to score political points, basically.
Exactly.
So it's complicated.
Oh, it's very complicated.
But this is all just what the governments are saying.
Yeah.
How are everyday people in Canada and India reacting to all of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the articles actually highlight a pretty big difference in public opinion between the two countries.
Really?
Yeah, in Canada, a lot of people are saying they're shocked and outraged by the allegations.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And some people are even calling on the government to take even stronger action against India.
Wow.
But in India, on the other hand,
Yeah.
there's a lot of anger directed at Canada. They think Trudeau is playing politics with a very sensitive issue.
So this has really stirred up a lot of emotions on both sides.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This isn't just some kind of diplomatic disagreement.
Yeah.
It's become a battle for public opinion, and the stakes are incredibly high.
Yeah, you're right. And what
But-
about the global Sikh community?
Yeah, we can't forget about them.
Have they weighed in on this whole thing?
Well, we don't have specific reactions in our sources from people within the Sikh diaspora.
Okay.
It's safe to say that this whole situation with Najjar and everything that's come after has got to be weighing heavily on those communities.
Yeah, it's got to be a really tough situation for them.
Imagine being a Sikh person
Right.
living in either Canada or India right now.
Right in the middle of all this.
Exactly. You're caught between these two governments
Yeah.
and all this escalating rhetoric.
It's a good reminder that these big geopolitical events,
Yeah,
they really do have an effect on everyday people.
absolutely they do.
Yeah. It's clear that this situation extends far beyond just those directly involved. We've talked about the impact on Canada and India, but what about the global Sikh community? Our sources haven't really gone into detail there, so what can you tell us?
It's a critical aspect of this whole thing. Even though we don't have specific reactions from Sikhs in our sources, it's probably safe to assume that this event with Najjar has created a lot of anxiety within the diaspora.
Yeah.
Imagine being a Sikh person living outside of India. Maybe they even have Canadian citizenship, and all of a sudden this debate about foreign interference hits really close to home.
That's a really good point. It reminds us that international relations aren't just about governments. They impact real people and their everyday lives.
Exactly, and the situation really highlights this tough balancing act that countries with large diasporas have to deal with.
What do you mean?
Well, on the one hand, they want to maintain a good relationship with the diaspora's country of origin, especially if it's an important economic or political partner.
Right, right.
But on the other hand, they have a responsibility to protect all of their own citizens, uphold the rule of law, no matter where their ancestors came from.
So where do we go from here? What are some potential outcomes of this diplomatic standoff, and what could this mean for the future of Canada-India relations?
Well, predicting the future is always a gamble.
That's for sure.
But based on everything we've discussed, there are a few scenarios that seem plausible.
Okay.
One possibility is that this drags on and we see this kind of prolonged diplomatic deep freeze. Embassies might operate with a smaller staff, and cooperation on things like trade or extradition could really slow down.
That wouldn't be good for either country.
No, not at all.
What else?
Another possibility is that other countries or maybe an organization like the UN step in and try to mediate the situation.
So a kind of neutral third party to help smooth things over.
Yeah, exactly. Encourage dialogue and de-escalation.
Makes sense.
But even if that happens, I think rebuilding trust is going to be really difficult.
Yeah, I bet.
This situation has really brought to the surface some deeply rooted suspicions and resentments on both sides.
And of course, there's always a chance things could get even worse, right? Could we see things like sanctions, travel bans, maybe even something more serious?
It's possible, although hopefully it doesn't go that far.
Hmm.
International relations are unpredictable. Things can escalate quickly.
Yeah.
That being said, both Canada and India have a long history of resolving disagreements through diplomacy, even when things have been heated in the past.
Okay, well, that's at least somewhat reassuring. But this whole situation really underlines how fragile international relations can be, especially these days when information and misinformation travel so fast.
I agree. It's a stark reminder of how quickly tensions can flare up, how easily public opinion can be swayed. And a lot of times it's fueled by narratives that just confirm what people already believe.
Like you said earlier, it's a battle for hearts and minds just as much as it is a diplomatic standoff.
Exactly. And figuring out how to deal with all of this requires careful thought, a willingness to see things from different perspectives, and I think most importantly, a commitment to open and honest dialogue.
That's a great point to end on. So as we wrap up this deep dive into this developing situation, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing is to realize that even though this is a crisis that's playing out between Canada and India, it reflects a lot of the bigger trends and challenges that we're facing all over the world.
Like what?
Well, we're talking about things like political violence, diplomatic tensions, the impact on diasporas. These are all things that happen again and again in international relations. It's not just this one situation.
That's a really good point, and understanding all of this is important for everyone, really, especially for those of us who want to engage with all the complexities of this globalized world.
Yeah, I completely agree. This deep dive might have been about a specific event, but it's really got us thinking about a lot of broader questions, and that's what makes it so interesting. I think so too. It's all about connecting the dots and hopefully becoming more informed and engaged citizens of the world.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder these intricacies of international relations. Until next time.